So I welcome you all again to this third academic session of the first day of this seminar. Now, may I invite all the distinguished professor on the dais. Professor R.C. Pradhan, sir, please come on the dais. Professor Madhuchanda Sen and Professor Gopal Sahu, please. Professor R.C. Pradhan has agreed to chair this session. Though we all know him very well and he does not need any introduction, but for the sake of formal introduction, let me just read out his brief bio. Professor Pradhan retired in 2015 as a professor from Department of Philosophy, University of Hyderabad. He also taught philosophy at Utkal University, Bhubaneswar, and Karnataka University, Dharwad, before joining the University of Hyderabad in 1987. He took his PhD from Banaras Hindu University in 1977. He was awarded the Commonwealth Academic Fellowship in the University of Oxford during 1990-91. He was a member secretary of the Indian Council of Philosophical Research, New Delhi. He was a national fellow at the Indian Institute of Advanced Studies, Simla, during 2018-20. His field of specialization includes philosophy of language, philosophy of mind, metaphysics, and the philosophy of Wittgenstein. He has published and edited various books and contributed many papers to philosophy journals. His recent publications are Mind, Meaning, and World, a Transcendental Perspective, and Metaphysics of Consciousness, the Indian Vedantic Perspective in 2020. The Early Philosophy of the Akasana, it was published by Springer in 2021. We have first speaker of this session, Professor Madhuchanda Sen. Madhuchanda Sen is a professor of philosophy at Jadavpur University, where she has been teaching from 2011. She is currently the head of the Department of Philosophy. She taught at Rabindra Bharati University from 2001 to 2011. She was educated at Jadavpur University, Jadavpur University, Kolkata, and University College London. Her major areas of research interest are philosophy of mind, philosophy of language, critical thinking, and epistemology. Various book publication includes Externalism and the Mental by Oxford, Introduction to Critical Thinking by Pearson, and The Logic with Stan Baronet has been published. Another is Sibachar Chintan, Ekti Bhumika. It has been published with Nilambar Chakrabarti. Another, The Self and the Other, the Inner and the Outer, Dissolving Binaries in Culture and Dialogue. There have been a number of edited volumes. I'm not just going to read out all of them. She was a faculty member of the module on critical thinking under the project Equal Jadavpur University, funded by EU. She works in the area of computer-aided learning of critical thinking. She was a visiting professor under Erasmus program at Department of History, Cultures and Civilization, University of Bologna, Italy. She was a visiting professor at University of Naples and Oriental Italy. Another, we have Professor Gopal Sahu. Gopal Sahu has a PhD in philosophy from prestigious Indian Institute of Technology, IIT Bombay. Presently works as a professor and head Department of Philosophy, University of Allahabad. Before that, Professor Sahu has taught in the prestigious Pratap Center of Philosophy, Amalner, and in the PG Government College, Chandigarh. Dr. Sahu joined PhD program at Indian Institute of Technology, Bombay, under Dr. P.R. Bhatt, and was awarded PhD degree for the thesis Rule Following Skepticism, Kripke, Goodman, Quine, and Wittgenstein. His areas of specialization are contemporary epistemology, particularly naturalized epistemology, skepticism, philosophy of mind, and philosophy of science. His current research areas are in consciousness and applied ethics. Dr. Sahu has published a book and 50 papers in almost all philosophy journals in India. His publications are mainly on naturalized epistemology, skepticism, philosophy of science, and ethics. He has presented papers in several seminars and conferences, both national and international. Dr. Sahu has got the opportunity to edit the prestigious philosophy journal, the Philosophical Quarterly, published from North Maharashtra University, Jalgaon from 1997 to 2002. Dr. Sahu is a member of uh, Sandarshan, the philosophy journal published from his own department. Dr. Sahu was awarded the prestigious Jawaharlal Nehru Doctoral Fellowship for History and Philosophy of Science, instituted by Jawaharlal Memorial Fund, New Delhi, besides UGC's JRF. May I request Dr. Pramod Kumar Bagare to felicitate our chair of this session, Professor Pradhan. Now, may I request Dr. Priyanka Mishra to kindly felicitate Professor Madhchanda Sen, our distinguished speaker. Okay. Uh, may I request Dr. Neeti Singh to kindly felicitate our distinguished speaker, Professor Sahu. Okay. Now, may I request Professor Pradhan to please take over from here? Uh, okay. Uh, Now, may I request Professor Madhuchanda Sen to go first and make her presentation? I think, yeah. I think it would be good to speak from here. Yeah.
And you have to just let's try. Let's see if you can see. Usually, you can see me, understand. Can you see me? Okay. I begin with an apology. Here? Is that better? Yeah. I would have loved to do a formal Mangalacharan, but unfortunately I am unable to do that. Instead, I extend my heartfelt thanks to the Department of Philosophy and Religion for inviting me to BHU, where I'm visiting for the first time to speak in this very important seminar. And I would like to thank especially my young friend Rajibo for remembering me and asking me to be here with you. Uh, as you know, we are here concerned with problems of semantics, not only in the Indian tradition, but also in the Western analytical tradition. And in particular, we are interested in the works of WVO Quine. I thought that one should say something new about Quine. And I racked my brains, and old thoughts sort of reappeared. So I gave up the idea of coming up with a new idea. But instead, I decided to come up with a new reorganization of old ideas. I think most of us are doing that in any case. So the main question that I am going to ask here and try to answer following Quine and then Davidson is, how do we understand what people say? Okay. So this is my question. Now, I want to, I want to make this really interesting for the students, because I find them the most interesting people on earth. They keep me alive. So I'm going to address to them rather than my esteemed colleagues, because I know for sure that reading of Quine and his followers are a thing of a past now. So I would really, really like to address the students, and for that I shall have to say a few very, very rudimentary things. But before we start off with the formal paper, I want to give you two examples. Okay. One example was given by Quine himself, and another example is an example that we find in a play by an English playwright, Sheridan. The play is called The Rivals. And I'm going to sort of, nudge you with the issue of whether at all we can understand others. And if we do, how is it that we manage to understand what people are saying? So here is the first story. Quine gives us a story. He says that a field linguist goes into a very exotic place, to a tribe that he has no knowledge of, that he has never seen before, and whose language is completely unknown to him. Okay? So he tries to decipher what they are saying. So he's kind of, trying out all sorts of alternatives that are coming to his mind whenever a person is speaking. So he sees that these native tribals, they are saying gavagai, a strange word, gavagai, gavagai. He's trying to find out what gavagai means. He notices that every time a rabbit is passing by, they are saying gavagai. So he thinks that, okay, gavagai must mean rabbit. Okay. But Quine being Quine and philosophers being philosophers, they tend to overthink. So he's not satisfied with this answer that has come into his mind, that gavagai means rabbit. He thinks, okay, maybe they are just saying parts of rabbit. Maybe, why should they say parts of rabbit? I've always thought, I mean, who would say seeing a rabbit, parts of rabbit? But anyway, he could say parts of rabbit. Or they could say white flash. Or they could say long ears. Or they could say rabbits scampering by. Maybe gavagai is just a sentence, one word sentence, which means rabbit passing by. So this gives Quine the idea that, we may try to translate a sentence uttered by someone whose language we do not know, and we may come up with alternative translations which equally explain his verbal behavior of uttering gava guy, okay? And we have no way of knowing which of these alternative translations are correct. So this is one example. So this really, really makes us feel extremely nervous because we don't know whether we understand each other, because, you know, you might be saying something completely different from what I think you are saying. There is always a possibility your verbal behavior may be explained by a different kind of interpretation or translation. So this is one story. There is another story, okay? So it is a story about a poor lady called Mrs. Malaprop. Okay. Mrs. Malaprop has a peculiar habit of, you know, messing up words. You know, she uses different words to mean different things, in the sense that she should be saying X to mean Y, but she, by mistake, says Z to mean Y. But funnily, we always understand what she wants to say. So there is this Malaprop, Mrs. Malaprop says, sure, if I reprehend anything in this world, it is the use of my oracular tongue and a nice derangement of epitaphs. This nonsensical utterance might, for example, be corrected, and we do indeed correct it. Anybody who is a proficient speaker of English at once understands what she wants to say. She wants to say, if I reprehend, not reprehend, if I apprehend anything in this world, it is the use of my vernacular tongue, not oracular tongue, and a nice arrangement of epithets and not nice derangement of epitaphs. So, if this is the case, if I am always in between these two extremes, one is no matter what nonsense you say, I always understand you. This is one side of the story. And the other side of the story is that no matter how much I gather data in order to understand what you are saying, all the data that I gather can be interpreted in very many different ways, and that may make very many different translations equally plausible. So I am sort of in between these two extremes. So how is it that I understand what people say, given the fact that I am always faced with this indeterminacy? And on the other hand, no matter what nonsense you say, I can understand you. So in our lives, we are really not at the extremes. We are not Mrs. Malaprop, the people who understand Mrs. Malaprop, or, you know, like Quine, not understanding what is being said because there are so many alternatives open to us. We actually understand this. How does that happen? So this is what I think Quine really was trying to reveal. And how does he do it? Now, a great deal of talk has been going on, and I'm very happy that I got a chance of hearing my old professor, Professor P.K. Mukhopadhyay, from whom I learned philosophical logic and Bhakti Panchaka. So he said one thing, and I'm going to say something completely opposite to what he said. He said that in Indian philosophy, philosophy of language has its home in epistemology, whereas in Western philosophy, and especially in the 20th century philosophy, uh, people like Quine, Davidson, their Carnap, their philosophy of language is not hosted in the larger area of epistemology. What I'm trying to propose here is that this whole question, how is it that I manage to understand what Srikala says to me, in spite of the fact that I haven't seen her for such a long time, and in spite of the fact that she might have a completely different conceptual scheme, etc., etc., how do I answer that question? How is it that I understand her? This question has to be understood within the larger framework of our theories of epistemological justification. This is the point that I want to make. And I think that Quine possibly didn't have a good answer, but his student Davidson did. So this is what I want to do. And if time runs out, I've already told you what I want to do. Okay. So one of the things that I want the students to understand is that when a person like Quine is talking about a theory of meaning for in his philosophy of language, he means very a particular thing by the phrase theory of meaning, and possibly it is a good thing to understand what he meant by that, because that will really make you understand why it is an important question for any philosopher of language pursuing it from the Western tradition, that how is it that I understand others. Now, one of the things that philosophers interested in theories of meaning was this. They tried to find out what the concept of meaning meant. Okay. So that was a kind of grand philosophical program to give a kind of definition of meaning. What is meaning? Okay. And every time I say this, I'm a little scared, because when such a sentence or such a question comes from a philosopher, people expect that as soon as I give you the answer, you would be liberated. But no, just I'm asking about what does meaning mean? Okay. So what is meaning? Soon, philosophers understood that this is not what we want to have, because soon meaning in the 20th century, philosophers understood that we are not interested in understanding the concept of meaning in the way that we are interested in understanding the concept of knowledge. Rather, let us look at the various instances in which the concept of meaning is important. And they found out that yes, we need the concept of meaning because it is very important in the context of understanding, in the context of communication, in the context of translation, and in the context of learning and teaching of language. Soon enough, there emerged a very strong view endorsed by many philosophers of language. They all assign this insight to Gottlob Frege, who claims the sense of an expression is what someone who understands the expression grasps. And here, by sense, he means meaning. And consequently, the Freudian dictum became a kind of slogan amongst the 20th century philosophers of language. A theory of meaning is actually a theory of understanding. So, meaning of a word is what I understand when I grasp the word. Meaning of a sentence is what I understand when I understand the sentence. So, a theory of meaning is actually a theory of understanding. And if indeed a theory of meaning is a theory of understanding, it at least has to do one job: explain linguistic understanding. And that is exactly what we are doing. I hope the students are with me till now. You are welcome to stop me at any point. This is why I would like to emphasize on the idea of linguistic understanding exclusively. We think that we can give an account of linguistic understanding and the lack of understanding by bringing in the concept of meaning. And that is why we are having a kind of theory of meaning. Okay. Consequently, if we are to come up with a theory of meaning, we need to explain how is it that we actually understand language. And we are not interested in giving a definition of a kind of Aristotelian essence, meaning, with a capital M. I'm skipping. What we get from Quine and Davidson, these two examples, like we may be always mistaken, and no matter what you say, I always understand you, these two extremes lead us to a kind of skepticism about meaning. And I shall try to explain how this might happen first, and then I would like to show that how we may avoid meaning skepticism. I want to say that this may come from Davidson's coherence theory of truth and knowledge. We shall first start with Quine's idea of indeterminacy of translation. Then we shall briefly speak about indeterminacy of interpretation, a la Davidson. Then we speak of the phenomenon of malapropism. And then we try at the end to vanquish meaning skepticism. Okay. So, what? I have 5 minutes. How can I have 5 minutes when the earlier speaker had 1 hour? I really can't finish in 10 minutes or 5 minutes. Let us first start with Quine's thesis of indeterminacy. Quine talked about 3 indeterminacies. Our epistemological project is deeply influenced by these 3 indeterminacies. They are indeterminacy of translation, inscrutability of reference, and underdetermination of scientific theory. Quine had his roots deeply embedded in the empiricist and pragmatist tradition, and along with this, he was truly an analytical philosopher. What we must realize that the project, and these are very important things that I want to say. This is why I differ from P.K. Mukhopadhyay. What we must understand is that the project of human inquiry is to know the world around us and to make sense of this world around us and also make sense of our place in it. Call it a human fetish or not, we are also extremely keen in getting the right picture of things, to sift out the truth from the myriad of erroneous understanding of the world. Others and the speech of others are no exception to this project of ours. We want to be correct in deciphering what others say, what they mean by the words, and what they wish to say by the use of certain words. This too is an epistemic project and hence is a subject of and hence is subjected to all the kinds of indeterminacies that Quine spoke of. I will start with the first indeterminacy. Quine calls this the inscrutability of reference. Quine's thesis of inscrutability of reference, and I quote, is that there is no way to tell what a singular term of a language refers to, or what its predicates are true of. So, dharma and dharmi. At least no way to tell from the totality of the behavioral evidence, that is, the kind of linguistic behavior that we encounter from others, actual or potential, and such evidence is all that matters in the question of meaning and communication. So there is a kind of fluidity of reference to which actually Quine is referring to. Quine argues in his ontological relativity that this fact should lead us to recognize that the relation reference between objects and words is relative to arbitrary choice of a scheme of reference and in fact relative to a further basic parameter. Okay. This has a consequence for scientific theories for Quine, because for Quine, scientific theories are nothing but sets of sentences that tend to explain things. At the heart of underdetermination of scientific theory by evidence, this is the second indeterminacy, is the simple idea that the evidence available to us at any given time may be insufficient to determine what belief we should hold in response to the evidence that is in hand. And I apologize to my Quine scholars here. There is no time, so I'm not going into it. Finally, we come to indeterminacy of translation. The general claim of the indeterminacy of translation is that there may be actually different ways of translating a language which are equally correct, but which are not just stylistic variants, but actually completely different translations. Okay. Quine actually spoke of two kinds of indeterminacy: holophrastic indeterminacy and inscrutability of reference. I have spoken about the inscrutability of reference. Let me talk about the second one. The second kind of indeterminacy is that there is more than one correct method of translating sentences, where the two translations of a given sentence differ not merely in meanings attributed to the subsentential parts of speech, but also in the net import of the whole sentence. So this is what Quine's indeterminacy is. Davidson was extremely influenced by Quine, and he came up with the concept of indeterminacy of interpretation. Davidson is not only quite explicit in emphasizing the empirical character of a theory of meaning, but he also offers a kind of detailed account of, and that both explains how such a theory may be developed and specifies the very nature of the evidence on which it must be based. So, what we get from Davidson is known as radical translation. So, he comes up, for the benefit of the students, he comes up with an actual detailed analysis of how we actually go about translating other people. And he takes, like Quine, the example of a field linguist who is encountering a language about which he has no prior knowledge. Of course, when I'm talking to Srikala, I have prior knowledge of the language she speaks. But then why am I taking the example of the tribal language which I have no knowledge of? Because it is, if we can explain how understanding takes place in that case, then it would be far more easier for us to uh, explain how it takes place in this case. So this is the kind of radical situation where you have no background information. So the thing that we do is that, for example, in the case of the rabbit, I might go to the extreme, seeing, I cut off the tail of the rabbit and show it to the native and see if he indeed says Gavagai. I stop the rabbit from running and see if the native says Gavagai. And I go, you know, trying to, uh, trying to understand which of my different alternative translations might have gone wrong by, trying out all these variations. Okay. So, what I am actually trying to do is I am trying to give a radical interpretation of the behavior of the native. uh, you know, uh, Davidson is a little less radical than Quine. He says that we can at least go start with one thing that we may accept to be, a given, like yes and no. Okay. So he says that ascent and descent are behaviors which are sort of culture neutral and they are easily detectable. So, with this very minimum kind of given material, he comes up with a kind of radical interpretation program of understanding. Now, in doing so, he talks about many, many principles, of which one is very important, the principle of charity. So when I'm interpreting the native, I have to be charitable. What do I mean by that? I have to at least assume that the native is not mad or not irrational. Okay. So this is the basic minimum kind of presupposition that I move with. And so I always interpret the native so as to make the native more and more coherent in his own beliefs. So I can't, for example, Srikala says, I want to go to water. I at once understand I want to go and fetch water. Obviously, she is not saying that I want to really now submerge myself in water. Okay, so I ask her, water? And then she says, yes, a glass. Then, by adding up all these verbal clues, what I'm trying to do is to make a very coherent picture of her beliefs. And then ascribing those beliefs to her and making her more and more understandable to me. This entire program of, you know, assigning meanings, but not in piecemeal, but in chunks, like not only to one sentence, but to a sentence in a context, to a sentence related to other sentences, to larger and larger conversational context, we come up with what is known as holism in the theory of meaning. And many of my friends and esteemed scholars are going to talk about holism. So I'm not going into that. So this is what indeterminacy is. What Davidson wants us to understand is that indeterminacy definitely poses a threat to us, okay, to our ability to understand others. But he is optimistic. He is saying that indeterminacy is a fact of the matter, but it is not to be regarded as a threat. Why? Because he's saying that whatever translation I offer for one single sentence, given the kind of evidence that is presented to me, it will always be tentative. It will always suffer from indeterminacy. But how can it be systematically mistaken about larger and larger chunks of speech of another person? Now, one may say, a skeptic may say, oh, well, you are optimistic, but I am not. I can be completely mistaken about whatever your friend is talking about. You are completely mistaken about what she is talking. Right? This is a possibility. And whatever is a logical possibility is a possibility to be considered by a philosopher. So, how does one answer to this? I'm jumping like a kangaroo. So, I have really uh, uh, gone many, many pages ahead. This is for my esteemed colleagues and also for my students here. What we get from Davidson, and what I think radically differs from in his work differs um, from Quine, and wherein lies the promise of uh, taking indeterminacy not as a threat are a few things. One is that for Quine, sensations were the final arbiters. So sensations were regarded as justifiers. When we come to Davidson, we see that he is saying that sensations can never justify our beliefs. And this I am saying from his coherence theory of truth and knowledge. What he wants to say is that, Quine in a way was mistaken about the evidence at hand. The evidence is not just sensation, but belief in sensation. Okay. So, what he says in coherence theory of truth and knowledge is that what justifies a belief is not a sensation, but belief in a sensation. Because he says, suppose, I have a problem. Suppose every time I am speaking with my mother on the phone, I hear my children calling my name. Maybe, this is the anxiety that I suffer from, that I have to, I have to attend to all the people who are depending on me together. So even if my children really call me while my mother is, I'm on the phone with my mother, I will never believe in that sensation, because previously I have seen, I've said, Ma, please hold on. And yes, no, nobody has called me. So unless and until I believe in my sensation, they cannot justify my belief, right? So Davidson says that Quine was in a way mistaken in believing that what justifies a belief is a sensation. So for him, the kind of justification that he is coming up with is a kind of coherentist justification and not a foundationalist justification. And the kind of defense that he would give in support of claiming that we may be mistaken about the translation in the case of one belief, but not in the case of a great number of beliefs which are in a way linked to each other in a coherent system, is this, saying that, beliefs are the things that justify beliefs. And in the radical interpretation story, it corroborates it, because in the rabbit case, the way that I sift out the truth translation is by negotiating with the different beliefs and seeing how they, match up to form a coherent set. Okay. There is another rather optimistic thing that Davidson says. He says that, the reason that I understand Shrikala is very simple. The reason is that I understand her because I share most of my beliefs with her. Wow. What a thing to say. In the age of great cultural differences, how is it that he is making this claim that we share most of our beliefs? Here he comes up with a beautiful example, and I'm just mentioning the example, not going into the argument. He says, okay, let us take a case where there is a failure of understanding. And he takes up the case of deception. So he says that suppose I want to deceive you. Okay, that is the, utmost case of failure of communication and understanding. I can deceive you only if I share most of the beliefs that you have, because I have to use words in the way that you use. For example, I want to deceive you and I want to say that I am a karate black belt, which I'm not, unfortunately. So if I want to deceive you, I have to share this belief with you that a karate black belt is called a karate black belt, and a karate is a martial art, etc., etc. I have to share these beliefs, okay, in order for me to deceive you. So even in the case of failure of communication and misunderstanding, there is a large plethora of hidden understanding. So this is the first step. Then there is another optimistic step that Davidson takes. He says we share most of our beliefs because we share our world. And those beliefs which we share about our world are true. Here he comes up with an extremely important argument, which is known as the omniscient interpreter argument, and I'll stop with that. He says that, when we are coming up with a theory of understanding or a theory of meaning or a theory of translation or interpretation, we have to keep space for failure of understanding and success of understanding. We cannot, at the beginning of the theory, preclude the possibility of mistakes and also preclude the possibility of correct interpretation. And then he says, suppose there is an omniscient being. Okay. So, who is an omniscient being? A person who is always having correct beliefs, right? So, that person will also understand me because he or she has correct beliefs about everything in the world. Okay. So, how will he or she understand me? By sharing his or her belief with me. So, if we keep room for an omniscient interpreter in our theory of interpretation, then we shall share most of our beliefs with that omniscient interpreter, and most of our shared belief would be true. So, in spite of the fact that indeterminacy looms large in the case of singular sentences that I encounter uttered by a speaker, indeterminacy is not a threat when I have gone a long way in interpreting my friend Shrikala. Thank you. Sorry.
Thank you, Professor Sen, for really excellent presentation. I think as the chair has planned to have both the presentation first and then have discussion, how do you? So, okay, now may I invite Professor Gopal Sahu to come and make his presentation. Thank you.
How much time? Excuse me. How much time I'm given? How much time I should finish? No. So I will take 15 minutes. As we know, Quine has talked about lot of epistemic virtue. We'll discuss in the course of our presentation, and one of them is law of parsimony or economy. And I will follow that particular virtue, and I will try to finish within 15 minutes. So the title of my presentation is From Uncertainty to Knowledge, Exploring Quine's Indeterminacies and Naturalized Epistemology. Before I present my main thesis and objective of the presentation, let me say a little background of my presentation. And the background is that, as we know, and we all the time, whether we are philosopher or commoner or scientist, we always try to make sense of things around us. And once we make sense of the things around us, we try to communicate with others. And on the basis of that understanding, we try to generalize. So we are always, whether we are scientist or philosopher or commoner, we try to know the reality, get the information out the reality, then communicate with others and generalize. I thought theorization. These three things, that is referring, translation or communication, and theorization or generalization, uh, are the central themes of Quine. Now, as we know, the corpus of Quines is very, very vast, diverse, and very complex and technical also. Starting from his first article, that was Truth by Convention, that was published in 1936, up to the last book, that is From the Stimulus to the Sign. In between, he has published lot of groundbreaking and very, very original and creative things. Two Dogmas, Naturalized Epistemology, Web of Beliefs, of course, translate your indeterminacy and many other things. Now, here I'm not trying to um, do a kind of Quinean interpretation or frame a Quinean or to look for a Quine framework of his philosophy. That is what now I'm doing. I will simply take three basic problems here. The first problem is that, rather, my thesis, I can say that the observation is the primacy of our knowledge is observation statement, or that is the linguistic primacy. We start from to understand the world, we have to start from observation statement. This is what Quine will say. Second thing, that by nature, observation statements are vitiated with certain indeterminacy, certain problem, what he calls indeterminacy. Thirdly, even if there is indeterminacy, we can have knowledge, and that knowledge will be very pragmatic, consistent, useful, and as well as very, very novel. So these three things, three or thesis I want to present here, and these three thesis, as my title says, is an exploration, not a solution. Of course, the exploration will result in a kind of solution. And what is the problem? As ma'am has raised the problem, how do we understand each other? Can be the central theme. And I will try to put these three related questions to make sense of this particular question and try to offer a solution it. The first objective is that it's called observation statement. And see that observation statement is a technical kind of thing, and it is that it is an occasion sentence. It says when a person's sense organ start interacting with the physical object, the physical object send through some create or generate certain sensation in the observer sense organ, including the neural process. And that particular sensation that it creates, it's called observation statement. And this observation statement is partly linguistic, partly logical, partly real. And this occasion statement is either true or false. If a person will try to say, what is this? It will be either true or false. But all those other statements, which we call observation, categorical observation, many other things are derived from that, or even the theoretical statement is neither true nor false. Now, this observation statement is the report of our first sensation. And that sensation can be measured in terms of our neurology. To give an example, when I am uttering certain words here, that I utter certain sound, this particular sound that I am uttering creates certain pitch and force on the hearer's mind, and that pitch and the force can be measured, and it is the same for everyone because we have the same neural structure. So that particular statement that I am hearing the sound is an observation statement. But whether my sound is creating any sense to you, you are able to make sense of that sound, is not measurable. It varies from person to person. So rest of the things are called non-observation statement. So the question is that Quine says that to understand the world around us, we have to start from this sense observation statement. There is no other way. Now this observation statement, as I said, is an occasion statement, and in which they are nevertheless they are neither synthetic nor analytic, and we say that it will face the judgment of your sensation, of your experience, actual experience, to know it. Now, in the so this particular statement is neither analytic nor synthetic even. So now this comes from its two dogmas of empiricism, and this particular statement has to face the tribunal of sense organ to know whether it is true or false. Now, since this is the central of the all our understanding, rest of the statement which are related to this particular statement and derived from many other sources, maybe from logic, geometry, physics, and many other things. I need a glass of water. It is here. Is the is the place where we begin exploring our knowledge about the universe that exists around us. So this is the first thing that I wanted to put. Second thing is that since we start, there is no other way. That is why I call it epistemic primacy. We cannot peep into the real nature of the world. All our knowledge has to come through this observation statement and a group of observation statement which are linked in terms of higher order, whole, part, general, particular. So we have a group of related statement and they form a wave of belief. Now, this web of belief that is derived from observation statement will be always visited with uncertainty. What he called the it is his own term, and he talks about three kinds of indeterminacy, as Mem was also telling, that indeterminacy of translation, indeterminacy of reference or unscrutability of reference, or uh, relativity of ontology, ontological relativity, and thirdly, underdetermination of theory. Let us first come with the first thing, that inscrutability of reference or indeterminacy of reference. He says that you take any particular words or phrase or sentence in a web of beliefs. That particular sentence will not, is not directly touched or related to the reality. All that need to be explained in terms of some or others observation statement. Now, since the observation statement talks about, is directly linked to some reality, and that reality will, the observation statement will have certain ontological commitment. Now that ontological commitment will be in such a way that even there, the data, that observation statement that we have, and we call it is objective also, will be theory laden. It will be somehow or other related to one wave of belief or other. So since our observation, and that includes observation of the observation statement, is always theory laden, we cannot know whether our words and phrase that we use in a language it's or refer to the reality as it is. Therefore, it is inscrutability of reference. Now come to the translation. Even if I know what a sentence particularly means, let's say the observation statement, that particular statement will have, when I translate that particular statement into a different language or even in the same language to a different speaker, then that it's not possible, because we know that translating is such an activity that goes along with a set of related waves of belief. So the guy and the rabbit, it's the thought experiment, what Mem was discussing is very relevant. So even you cannot have the actual translation. Thirdly, we try to make generalization about the world on the basis of the observation statement, and he called the generalization thing, he's called the observation categorical. The observation categorical, that is theorization from the observation statement, will be always undetermined. And how? From the same observation statement, diverse, contradictory, contrary set of generalization or theoretical statements can be generalized. This is quite possible. He has done a lot of thought experiment for that. On the contrary, the same theoretical framework will accommodate diverse observation statement. Same given statement is same. On the basis of that same observation statement, we have Newtonian classical mechanics. Also, we have quantum mechanics. We have the same geometrical data. On the basis of that, we have the Archimedes, sorry, what is his name? And we have the non-Euclidean geometry. We have the Euclidean geometry. So that is quite possible. So we have to start from the observation statement. But from the observation statement, all that we can have is indeterminacies. Now, Quine will not say they are skepticism. Skepticism is not his, it is not his concern. He says that they are called nagging perplexity. They are nagging perplexity, not the skeptical. That you have to face this, but besides that, still we can have knowledge. And how? For that, he said that from the observation statement, there are two ways. One is it's called foundationalism, and it's called let us first build a foundation on the basis of observation statement. Once we build that, then we can build our things or theory about the universe around us. That Cartesians and other people try to do. But he said that this particular attempt is called fast philosophy attempt. And he said that that is not quite possible. Then what is left? The next sensible question is that we have knowledge despite indeterminacy. We refer things, we translate, we communicate, we generalize, we theorize. How that is possible? That is the question. And for that, he said that that can be understood with the help of the framework of naturalization of epistemology. It started with two or three things. Naturalized epistemology is not a fast philosophy. There is no a priori statement which does not require the scrutiny of sense experience. Every sentence, everything, including the statements of geometry, mathematics, and logic, will need to face the tribunal of the sense experience. There is no synthetic and everything. All things will face together. And thirdly, that there are certain logical criteria that need to be respected. There are certain practical things that need to be respected. So in the if we consider 4 or 5 things, then we need consistency, clarity, we need parsimony. That as I begin my presentation, we need generalization or comprehensiveness. So these are the logical principles. So if you start with the observation statement, and if you put all this epistemic virtue in our attempt to understand the things that we have already, then we will have a program what he calls naturalized epistemology. And the naturalized epistemology, it is in such a position that it will take the input from the world, input of the world from the language, then it will mix up certain logical principle into it, it will mix up certain practical principle into it, then we have a system of knowledge that we call science, and what he calls naturalized epistemology. Now, to conclude my presentation, I will again use the Nivrat analogy of a scientific knowledge. And we know that Nivrat, a logical positivist, and he was a colleague of Quine's also. He said that to understand and to build knowledge is like building a leaking ship within the sea. And naturalized epistemology is the ship. It is leaking. The indeterminacies are the whole. They are leaking. And we can repair the leaking so within being inside the sea by plank by plank. There is no need of dismantle the entire ship. There is no need of bringing the ship to the dock and dismantle it and then put them together and again sail it. While sailing in the sea, even if it is leaking, the natural epistemology has the capacity, has the framework, has the instrumentality, has the tool, has the procedure from language, reality, logic, practicality that will help a person, whether it is a scientist or a philosopher, a commoner, to repair the so-called leaking ship while sailing. And in the process, what I started, that our understanding of the world, and our communication with our fellow being, and our ability to generalize about the universe is very much possible within the Quinean naturalistic epistemologistic framework. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Professor Sahu, for really a detailed presentation on Quine. Now so I think let me first request Professor Pradhan to.
Please address, tell whom you are addressing. Please take this.
Let ma'am go first and then I'll come to you.
I enjoyed both the presentations. I'll be very, very fast. Regarding the indeterminacy of translation, what Madhuji has spoken. Like we know that the limitations of Quine, and of course, how much ever he is trying to say that he's not trying to be, it's not a limitation. But and then she also beautifully said, how Davidson enhances the thing. Just previously, I don't know if it was previously or in the morning, like someone was saying about, I think it was Sachidanand Mishraji, who said about the Shakti, the principle of Shakti. Now, what is Shakti is Shaktam Padam. Padam is, which has the potency. And how do you get to know the potency of the Padam? It is through the desire to know. Yadamicha. The person wants to know. What I'm trying to drive at is, I'm trying to be very fast. So when Davidson says that both of us understand each other because we seem to share the common world and to share the beliefs, and then he says we share the world. That seems insufficient for the purpose. And probably, Indian philosophy can repair this. Repairing the leaking ship. See, Indian philosophy probably can repair this. What I want to add is, when I want to know you, Nyadamicha, I want to know you. And by this desire, great desire to know, consciousness, it is a play of consciousness, where Indian philosophy speaks beautifully about this. So actually, there is no problem of understanding at all. Everybody understands every other person perfectly. If there is this communication that happens, when there is this desire to know, and the person moves out, as it were, and then when there is this unity of consciousness, which is also consciousness, which is in functional mode, is called cognition. So when this cognition consciousness merges, then there is perfect understanding. And then, of course, we philosophers cheer up saying that we don't understand each other, and that is our play. Thank you. Professor Sahu, you spoke beautifully.
Yeah, if I have correctly understood, what you want to add to the Davidsonian program is the desire to understand the other, the desire to communicate. And I suppose that Davidson's principle of charity will can be interpreted in this way. I mean, if I, for example, I want to communicate with you, and if I, from the very start, presuppose that, well, I can never communicate with her. She will never understand me. Okay. Then I will not really put myself into communicating at all. Okay. So it is only because I believe, I have the faith that if I try, you will understand. I desire to understand. And why do I do so? Because I act according to the principle of charity and think that, okay, she is like me and she would like to be understood. And because she wants to be understood herself, she would also want to understand me. So I think that maybe there could be a way out. I mean, the kind of thing that you want maybe could be found in Davidson as well. This principle of charity. I say this more because all the theories of understanding the minds of others have as a kind of presupposition this idea of empathy. you know. So unless I have empathy for the other, it is impossible for me to understand the other. This is also another presupposition. And many people have said that the Davidsonian principle of charity and principle of rationality is another version of this idea of empathy. Thank you.
Let Bhagri sir ask next question.
My question is addressed to both. Whoever of you would like to answer, please answer. Uh, Whether this problem of indeterminacy was an outcome of uh, physical sciences, for example, principle of indeterminacy propounded by Heisenberg. Okay, and second is all this can analytic philosophy play the role of fighting obscurantism? Because obscurantism, because all you spoke of Neurath, these the main proponents of analytic philosophy were Jews, and they had been driven from their home by fascism. So I'm a student of political philosophy, so I will speak from that perspective. So can analytical philosophy and philosophy of language provide us with weapons to fight the kind of fascism that is coming to the fore in Indian context? Thank you.
So I'm answering part of that. Now, the first question is that whether this indeterminacy is somehow similar or related or that kind of to the uncertainty principle of Heisenberg. So that thing is that yes, it is. Heisenberg also talked about uncertainty. Indeterminacy is nothing but a kind of uncertainty. But the uncertainty that Quine talks about is not the final, it is the starting point. But when it comes to Heisenberg, it is the end. The reality is like that. But that does not mean that means all our knowledge will be uncertain. There is probability, all knowledge will be probable. But Quine will say that the possibility of scientific knowledge, even if there is uncertainty, indeterminacy in the form of uncertainty, can be possible. And the most question is that we have objective universal knowledge. How that is possible despite uncertainty is the basic question. It is not the question whether there is uncertainty or indeterminacy.
I don't think I could have answered that better. So I think Professor Shah has answered the first question. The second question, well, I mean, uh, the kind of anti-foundationalism that we get in Otto Neurath, whether it stemmed from the history of his being persecuted in Austria, well, we have to find out that that could be a reason for, not holding on to foundational beliefs which are never to be questioned, taken as sacrosanct. Well, whenever people are facing such risks from totalitarian ideas, they move towards a more embracing ideology. That could be a reason, but I have no idea. I can't say. One has to look into the history of the ideas of these people. Thank you.
Okay, just 2 minutes. Hello. Hi. Okay. Thank you very much. Very good presentations, both of you. Just I wanted to ask one questions related with MAMS that Indian philosophical aspects, we all know that in Bhakkavadiya, Bhartrihari has mentioned a line that grammar is the Rajmarg through which we can obtain the liberation. So liberation is another kind of thing, and to understand the language is another kind of thing. So when you were saying, madam, that we have to understand a person's, if I am correct, that you in which way Division had defined that language, that culture and the language or the grammatical aspects, both the same, that we when we are understanding a culture, then is it required to understand the grammar of that culture? Or grammar, in that sense, grammar is universal grammar, or in a sense, if we say that grammar is universal, then that could be a biological grammar. And another sense is that if I am saying that grammar is local, or in a cultural basis they are different from language to language, then when we are saying that empathy and to understanding the other people, so we can understand the language of a culture, but we may not be that I am not empathetically understanding the people. So I think emotionally we can understand the culture, but it can be said that I am understanding the language of that people, not in my way, just I am understanding for understanding the thing. So this is my question, that whether when we are understanding a culture, is it required to understand the whole grammar of that culture, or to understand the sympathy of that or the emotions of that culture? That is the questions of my part. Thank you.
I'm not quite sure I understood your question, but I don't think that Davidson or Quine would be talking about the need for understanding the entire grammar of a particular language, of a particular culture, in order to, start understanding the languages of that culture. I think it would be a lifelong project to understand. Yeah. Um, and they're not only talking about the language of others. We take the language of others, uh, you know, and talk about radical translation only because it is the extreme. But the kind of indeterminacy that Quine and Davidson talks about is is also affecting uh, our communication. When I am communicating with a person who has the same mother tongue, the indeterminacy is there. Okay. Uh, this whole idea that whether or not we are able to understand the other person's mind, that is also a very crucial, question in philosophy. How is it that I know what other people are thinking, what is in their mind? Uh, that also is played by indeterminacies of the same kind. The only reason that empathy is brought about is that unless I have this empathetic attitude that the person that I'm trying to understand, be it the mind of the other person, the emotion of the other person, or the words that the other person is using, what I need to assume is that that person is as at least as rational as I am, is at least as honest as I am, is not a systematic deceiver, or, I mean, when I'm talking to you, if I assume that, you would be changing the words just in order to, misguide me, then I wouldn't be able to start. So this is where empathy comes. So understanding the emotion of a culture is a very difficult thing. Yeah, I mean, I don't know how we may do that. I don't know if we ourselves understand the emotion of our own culture. That is very difficult to think. Yeah. Thank you for your
I think the
question.
last question we need to have Professor
Professor Mishra.
Professor Godavish Mishra have one question. It will go on record.
Indeterminacy translation. Motilal, in his book Ethics and Epics, quotes Quine and talks about indeterminacy of translation as far as the religious language is concerned. I was thinking, from it is my submission. Can we have multiple determinacy for a particular understanding? Multiple determinacy that it might be this, and all of them are.
But I want my young friend to ask her question. She was not allowed to ask her question last session. I first have your question, have your answer. Yeah, please, please.
Thank you, ma'am. Actually, ma'am, we were talking a lot about the language, about the emotions. But if we are watching into our Indian philosophy, then we are having, for example, in Advaita Vedanta, the idea of the, how to say, the bigger knowledge, the knowledge about the life, which it is only in our own self, which cannot be explained, which cannot be shared, and which is understood only when we no need to explain anymore, which it is only inside. I think that it itself it is the emotion and the language which we cannot share with others. What it is about the Western philosophers about this kind of idea?
In answer to Professor Mishra, um, I don't know. I'm sitting next to sir. I don't know if I can say this. This possibility of each of the translations being true will be there under the system where there you can allow uh, reality to be multifaceted in a kind of Patnamin sense, if you allow. That this is also true, and this is also true, and this is also true. But I don't think this is what Quine and Davidson is going to allow, because this accepts, at least for Davidson, I may say that, this would have the assumption of conceptual relativity, and he hates conceptual relativism. But I'm happy with conceptual relativism. But it's tricky when you're talking about how the world is. You may say, the world is different. If you look at it from a different perspective, it will look different to you. But can we apply that same logic when we are talking about linguistic understanding? That is something which may be problematic. I have to think about it. Yeah, I will think about it. And about your, sorry, maybe Professor Pradhan will answer this question. But about our friend, first of all, we were really talking about how we understand what other people say. Where there is a need to talk, where there is no need to talk, there is no question of how we understand. We understand if we understand. We do not understand if we do not understand. And the kind of area of understanding I'm not even saying knowledge, because knowledge seems to be too small a word to capture that you are talking about. Okay, there. I mean, what is the necessity of even uttering a single word? And it would be wrong to assume that such understanding is only limited to Indian wisdom. It is present everywhere. At least if we do not believe this, we will not be able to reach a point where we can keep silent. Thank you.
Yeah, now I would invite Professor R.C. Pradhan for presidential remarks.
So, friends, I'll be very brief in my comments. I think we have listened to two very brilliant presentations this evening. Professor Sen has covered the entire gamut of ideas of both Quine and Davidson for solving the problem how we understand the other. In fact, she is right in suggesting that both Quine and Davidson were concerned with how to understand the other's language, not other's silence. If their others are silent, then there is no question of understanding them. But different way of understanding may be there, but they are concerned with linguistic understanding. And Professor Sen has rightly pointed out that understanding doesn't come so easily. So the radical situation that Quine visualizes is the real test of your understanding capacity. That's why even Quine also talked about charity, principle of charity. He talks about principle of charity even in the word and object. But it is Davidson who has really given uh, prominence to the principle of charity in his account of interpreting the language of others. So this question of how we charitably approach the other is a matter of debate. It cannot be, one cannot be so charitable that we will understand everything that somebody utters. So we have to really have a rationality constraint on the principle of charity. So it must be the other must be a rational person. Then only we can understand. If somebody is irrational, as he has rightly pointed out, then we can never understand. So there is a framework, both Quine and Davidson agree, that we can understand the other, we can translate their languages in spite of indeterminacy. So there is no question of skepticism at all. It is only indeterminacy. And indeterminacy is not exactly uncertainty. It is multiple choices will be there, and it will be difficult to say which one is the best translation. But it cannot be denied that there could be a best translation among the available many. So really she has given us much food for thought, like the concept of omniscient interpretation. We are not omniscient. That's why Davidson has introduced the notion of omniscience as the limit of our own understanding of the other. Our understanding is partial, limited. Many times it is successful, but it is not, in a sense, a God's way of understanding. So that is a brilliant point, and she has elaborated it so well. Professor Sahu also has covered the same ground, but from a different aspect, especially knowledge aspect. And he's right to suggest that Quine's whole effort is to justify science, how to build a scientific theory. In fact, he says the entire gamut of our knowledge is the theory. And if the entire gamut of our knowledge of the theory, then it needs a foundation. So, and he has really pointed out that the foundation is observation and observation sentences. But the question is, the journey of Quine is not from uncertain to knowledge. Rather, it should be, this is my opinion, from certainty to uncertainty, if at all that way we can put it. That is, as soon as we go to higher level of knowledge, indeterminacy arises, because we do not know which theory of science will be the best, but we are eternally searching for the best theory of science. So in that sense, indeterminacy creeps in in spite of our best effort. If you are an empiricist and also a naturalist like Quine, you cannot avoid the underdeterminacy of scientific theory. So underdeterminacy is itself another form of indeterminacy, because you do not know which science or scientific theory will be the best, though the initial inputs will be the same. So our exposure to the world will be the same. Our stimulus meaning of the occasional sentences will be the same. But when we arrive at theoretical sentences, there lies the problem, that we cannot be sure about which science will be the best. And last point is a very striking point, Neurath's boat. So the boat is supposed to be taken not to the shore, but it has to be rebuilt from while it is floating in the sea. So in that sense, so it is a boat or a ship is the same, that we have to rebuild our knowledge while being within the system of knowledge. I think this is a novel idea which has come from Neurath, and Quine has adopted it. And therewith comes the question of holism, that the whole of science has to face the barrage of sense experience. So no single sentence will face experience. The entire science has to face experience. So in that sense, the question of revisability comes, that scientific theory can be revised, but only in the interior. There is a small part in his system which is least revisable, and that is mathematics and logic. So he has a great respect for mathematics and logic, but so far as physical science is concerned, he has to tell us that there are many possibilities in science which we have not explored so far. So many of the issues which will require more time, but both the presentations have been very brilliant, and we are ending with a note, a positive note, that what they will say and what we will hear will be intelligible. So because Sanskrit will not come on the way. So anyway, that is a new, this is the way we will understand each other. And I thank the audience who have raised questions, and also the patiently our students are here, researchers are here, because that is the great success of a seminar. If they are not there, what we will do here? Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Many thanks to all of you, and I am so sorry for the online audience. We couldn't provide any space to put their thought. So now it's over for the session. So day we can meet tomorrow at 9:30 a.m.